There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, the kind that creeps in after the laughter fades, when something feels just off. That's the silence I had been living in. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it, that Michael was just busy or tired or stressed. But the more I tried to believe that, the louder the silence got. It hummed through the walls, sat beside me at dinner, echoed in our bed. He started locking his phone, whispering in the hallway, going for drives that took longer than they used to. I noticed every little shift, the way he smiled at texts he wouldn't show me, the quick swipes to close apps when I walked into the room. But I didn't ask. I didn't accuse. I watched. And then one night, while he showered, I sat in the dim light of the living room with my laptop. His devices synced to our cloud, something he'd clearly forgotten. And there it was, messages from someone saved as L, too flirty, too frequent, too familiar. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the screen, and made a decision. If he was going to play behind my back, I'd rather watch from the front row. The next morning, I smiled like nothing had changed, poured his coffee, kissed his cheek, listened to him lie straight to my face about a meeting he didn't have. I nodded, played along, even laughed at his jokes. But inside, I was rewiring. Every word he said became evidence. Every excuse he gave, a piece of the puzzle. I wasn't Eva, the wife, anymore. I was Eva, the observer. Funny how once you know, the world sharpens. You start seeing everything, the smudged lipstick on his collar that wasn't mine, the missed calls labeled unknown, the sudden need to work late on Thursdays. And he thought I was still clueless, that I was just floating in this fog of domestic bliss while he rewrote our vows in secret with someone else. But what he didn't know was that I had already stepped outside the fog. And what he couldn't see, what he'd never suspect, was that I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. I was going to give him space. Just enough rope to hang himself with. And every time he looked at me and lied, I handed him another inch. That week, I studied him like a stranger. How easily he could say, "I love you," with a straight face. How his eyes drifted to his phone even when I was mid-sentence. There was no guilt in him, just convenience. I realized he wasn't even afraid of being caught, because he truly thought I'd never notice. Or worse, that I'd never leave. But I wasn't the same woman he married. Life had shaped me, carved out my softness and replaced it with quiet resilience. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do something far more terrifying. Stay still. Wait. Watch. Let him keep performing until the mask fell off on its own. By the end of that week, I had a plan. Not just an idea, not a vague thought, a real plan. I knew what I needed. I knew how I'd get it, because if he was going to give the performance of a lifetime, I'd make sure the cameras were rolling. It started with a sigh, one of those long, slow ones that made me sound drained. I let my shoulders slump, moved a little slower, stared just a bit too long at the floor. "I think I'm coming down with something," I told him, voice soft, eyes distant. And just like that, the first domino fell. Michael looked concerned, not panicked, just mildly inconvenienced. He asked if I needed anything, handed me a blanket, kissed my forehead, then picked up his phone. By the second day, I barely left the couch. I wore the same hoodie, left the curtains drawn, let the silence thicken. "You should rest," he said, eyes flicking between me and the glowing screen in his palm. And that's when I knew. He was getting comfortable again. Reassured by my stillness, relaxed enough to drop his guard. He'd check on me with one hand and text her with the other. That's exactly what I wanted. Because hidden in the corner of our bookshelf, angled just right between a row of cookbooks and a dusty vase, was a tiny black lens. And across the room, tucked inside a picture frame, a mic. He thought I was fading, but I was recording. Every glance, every smirk, every tap of his thumb against the screen. He started talking more freely, thinking I was half asleep, half aware, half anything. I wasn't. I was taking mental notes while my cameras took visual ones. Sometimes he'd sit next to me, rubbing my shoulder with one hand while texting with the other. I'd watch him out of the corner of my eye, pretending to drift off, counting the seconds between his lies and his smile. He whispered into the phone once, thinking I couldn't hear. Something about Elle missing him. About how things were complicated at home right now. I almost laughed. Complicated? He had no idea. And in those moments, I understood something deeper. He wasn't just cheating. He was rewriting our life like it was disposable, casual, something to toss aside when it got dull. But I wasn't just sitting there soaking in betrayal. I was collecting data. Every sweet lie he whispered, every excuse, every moment he played loving husband while texting his secret. All captured in crisp, unforgiving detail. He thought he was getting away with it. What he didn't know was that he was performing under surveillance, and the show was only just beginning. By the fourth day, I had hours of footage, clear as daylight, his face lit up by the glow of his phone, fingers dancing across the screen, murmurs of affection meant for someone else. Sometimes he even laughed, like whatever she wrote was the highlight of his day. And there I was, playing the role of the fading wife, quietly capturing every second of it. He brought me soup once, placed it gently on the coffee table, kissed my forehead like I was some fragile thing he still cared about. I thanked him with a smile, and he smiled back, not realizing that just behind him, the red light on the camera blinked once. Recording. Always recording. He thought he was in control, that he was navigating two worlds without consequence. But I had created a third one, a world where truth had teeth, and it bit down hard. While he scrolled through fantasies and half-truths, I was building something real, tangible, unmistakable, and soon, very soon, he'd be forced to look at it all. Because while he comforted me with fake concern, I was capturing the truth in high definition. The footage piled up fast. I'd sit at night with my laptop, headphones in, watching the man I married become someone I didn't recognize. Frame by frame, lie by lie, the mask slipped. One moment, he'd be whispering, "I love you" to me as he tucked in the blanket. The next, he'd be grinning into his phone, telling Elle she made his heart race. It was like watching a documentary on betrayal, and I was the unwilling narrator. There was one clip that stayed with me. He was on the phone with a friend, pacing the living room while I slept. Laughing, light, like life was a game. "She's too weak to see anything coming," he said. I remember pausing the video, rewinding it, playing it again, just to be sure I heard right. I did. My chest didn't ache, my hands didn't shake, just quiet, steady, focused. By then, I had folders labeled by date, clips backed up twice, one on a drive hidden in my closet, another in the cloud under a name he'd never think to search. This wasn't paranoia, it was preservation, of truth, of dignity, of proof. He thought I was unraveling. But really? I was documenting every moment of his downfall, one careless lie at a time. Every night became a ritual. He'd fall asleep beside me, peacefully, like someone who thought he was safe, and I'd slip into the living room, open the laptop, and press play. I studied his face in those videos, how easily it changed, how naturally the charm flickered on when he texted her, how blank his eyes were when he turned back to me. It wasn't heartbreak I felt. It was clarity. Cold and sharp like glass. The footage wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me, too. About seeing my own silence, my own strength. About realizing I wasn't weak. I was waiting. Waiting for the exact moment when all his little secrets would fold in on themselves. I knew every smirk, every lie, every time he said, "I'll be home soon," and wasn't. The camera saw what I saw. And the mic? It heard what my heart had already figured out weeks ago. Once I watched a video where he paused mid-text, looked at me, then smiled softly before finishing his message to her. That one stung, but not because it hurt, because it was calculated, practiced. Like he thought the act was enough to keep me in place. That little smile, meant to soothe me, ended up sealing his fate. By the end of the week, I had hours of betrayal cataloged and ready. It was surreal, watching the story of my own marriage collapse on screen like a series of home videos gone wrong. There was no yelling, no dramatic fights, no slammed doors, just a man unraveling, unaware that every lie he whispered into his phone was becoming part of his own undoing. I started imagining the moment, the one where he'd finally see himself the way I had been seeing him. Not through my eyes, but through the lens he never noticed. I could already picture his face when he heard himself joke about me, when he realized how much I knew, how long I'd known. It wouldn't be loud, it wouldn't be messy, it would be undeniable. He thought he was operating in the shadows, clever and unseen, but the truth doesn't stay buried forever, and I didn't need to scream it from the rooftops. I just needed to press play. He thought I was falling apart, when in reality, I was building a case. Quietly, completely. And now, it was ready. I told him I was finally feeling better, that maybe we should celebrate, just the two of us. A quiet dinner at home, candles, soft music, his favorite wine. He smiled, relieved, maybe even a little smug, like he believed the storm had passed, like I was back to being the version of me who didn't know better. I watched him light the candles, set the table, pour the wine, all the while wondering how it felt to dress up for your own downfall. I placed the laptop at the center of the table. He raised an eyebrow, asked what it was for. "Just something I want to show you," I said gently, sliding into my chair. He shrugged, took a sip, leaned back like this was just another Tuesday. My fingers hovered over the spacebar for a second. One press. That's all it took. The video lit up the screen, his face, his words, his deception, playing back in full color. At first, he didn't react, just stared. Then his jaw tensed. The wine glass stopped midway to his lips. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Every lie, every message, every smug laugh filled the silence between us. And when the screen went black, I reached into my bag and laid the divorce papers next to his plate. "While you were texting," I said, "I was recording. This is your final appearance." He didn't say a word at first, just sat there, staring at the laptop like it might turn back time if he looked hard enough. His face twisted, confusion, then denial, then fear. I saw it all. The same face that had looked me in the eye while lying now had nothing left to hide behind. He opened his mouth once, maybe twice, but no words came. Just that empty, helpless silence that finally, said the truth out loud. I stood up, slow and calm, gathering the folder with the documents I'd been preparing for weeks. I'd even highlighted the key points for him: asset division, custody of the dog, the date of the final hearing. He blinked fast, like he was trying to wake up from a dream. But this wasn't a dream. It was reality, edited and produced by his own hands. And I was simply delivering the premiere. He asked if we could talk. I told him we already had. I had listened to his real thoughts night after night through those recordings. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. He gave me lies, and I gave him clarity. One recording at a time. This wasn't a fight. It was a conclusion. A line drawn with no screaming, no drama. Just a screen, a signature, and a very quiet goodbye. He sat there long after I left the table, staring at the screen as if it might blink again. I didn't look back. I packed my bag with the same steady hands that had packed our anniversary gifts years before. But this time I wasn't wrapping love in ribbons. I was unwrapping freedom. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to feel eerie, lonely. But now, it felt clean. Like something had finally been scrubbed out of the walls. I left the signed documents on the counter and took my keys without a word. He didn't follow me. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he knew there was nothing left to say that I hadn't already heard whispered in the shadows of his betrayal. And honestly, I didn't need to see his reaction. I already had the one that mattered. The moment he watched himself destroy the life he thought he controlled. That was the gift I gave myself. Not revenge, not even justice, Just the simple power of knowing he saw it all, every lie, every betrayal, played back without filters. And as I closed the door behind me, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel empty. I felt done. Completely and beautifully done. The next morning, I left the house for good. No screaming, no bags thrown out the window, no final dramatic scene. Just sunlight, a suitcase, and a woman who had nothing left to prove. I didn't leave a note. I didn't text. I didn't even glance at his name in my phone. I simply walked away from the wreckage, calm, clear-headed, and finally weightless. He tried calling. Of course he did. First, it was a few missed calls, then voicemails, some filled with stammered apologies, some begging for a second chance, some angry and defensive. I didn't respond. There was no need to. I'd already heard his real voice in those secret recordings, the one that laughed behind my back, that joked about my sickness, that whispered promises to someone else while holding my hand. I never reached out to Elle. She didn't matter. This was never about her. This was about him and me and the chasm he created between us with every lie. And now? Now I had stepped across that chasm and kept walking. He stayed behind, alone with his phone, his guilt, and the slow realization that I was never coming back. I found a small apartment on the other side of town. Nothing extravagant, just enough space for me and peace. I bought a new coffee mug, slept with the window open, played music in the mornings without checking the volume. It's strange, how quiet freedom sounds. No need to track his whereabouts, decode his silences, or brace for the next lie. Just me, breathing without tiptoeing around the truth. But closure, that came in an unexpected form. One night I clipped a short segment from the footage, just 42 seconds, no names, no faces, just his voice, laughing on the phone. She's too weak to see anything coming. I uploaded it to an anonymous forum about emotional betrayal, titled it, When He Thought She Didn't Know. I didn't expect much, but within hours it started gaining traction. Comments poured in, women recognizing the tone, the manipulation, the casual cruelty. Some said it mirrored their own stories. Some asked if there'd be more. I never replied. I didn't have to. The clip spoke for itself, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something deeper than relief. I felt seen, not just by others, but by the version of me who finally chose herself. I never went viral in the traditional sense. No fame, no headlines, no exposé. Just a quiet ripple in a digital sea of stories like mine. But that was enough. Somewhere out there, he probably saw it. Or maybe someone close to him did. Maybe a friend recognized his voice. Or maybe he just felt the shift, the unease of being exposed without knowing when or where or by whom. He had the spotlight for so long, playing the devoted husband in public, the secret lover in private, the manipulator in silence. But the beauty of truth is that it doesn't need applause. It just needs to be witnessed. And he was. Fully. By me. By strangers. By a part of himself he never wanted to face. I never responded to his last message. I didn't need to. That version of my life, the one where I waited, begged, hoped, ended the moment I pressed record. He thought he had all the power. What he didn't know is that I held the switch the whole time. And when it mattered most, I flipped it off.